Okay, everybody, I'm excited to bring you this one. The major insight into this little edition of Syncretism was brought on by my 6-year-old daughter, proving that everybody's a syncretist once they put their head into it a little bit. But we'll get to her little role in this in a second. But let's just talk about the difference between ordinal and cardinal numbers. Cardinal numbers are just reading them off as they go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are the cardinal numbers. The ordinal numbers, they represent an orientation. I think ordinal and oriental are similar, but it's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Those are the ordinal numbers. And you recognize that cardinal is an astrological term. It's the beginning of things. You just begin to count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And ordinal, in order, this is all a representation of order. The orientation first it's explaining a relationship compared to other things, and originally the 0 point, the 0 in ordinal. But order is an archetype of Saturn. Saturn is the planet of, it's chronos, so it's chronology and order. So this will all tie into Saturn later, but that's the beginning of how Saturn gets tied into the idea of ordinal numbers. And now I'm just going to first look at the words first, second, and third. Basically the rest of, the ordinal numbers are just the word of the number with the th at the end. This is a little different, and I could probably do a whole other thing of looking into this, but why this isn't a V instead of F. But basically, from the here on out, every other ordinal number is just the cardinal number with a th at the end, except for these first three. 3 is pretty similar, but we'll get into this. But this doesn't sound like 1. First doesn't sound like 1. Second doesn't sound like 2, and third only kind of sounds like 3. It's not 3. So here's my interpretation of the first ones. First, fire. First thing I would think of, fire. And phi, it's the phi ratio, it's phi radiance, and it all goes back to torus fields, because that's, this is Taurus, RST, it's right in there. Fire is the first element of the zodiac and of the Taurus field. It's the beginning of Ra, radiation. So that's the way I would interpret it, and every Taurus field has a phi ratio to it. It's a phi ratio. That's how I would interpret first. Second, the first thing I would think of is succedent houses in astrology. It's succeedent. And really this, succeed is a pretty natural, association with second. But the actual word succedent, which phonetically sounds very similar to second. It's just taking out that s. It's just second. It's a little different, but it's basically the same. But it's really only used in astrology, this particular word that sounds phonetically so similar to second. And it's the second, the first house in astrology from the cardinal signs are angular houses. The second sign, the next signs are the fixed signs, are the succedent signs, as the second in order. Now, third, it sounds a lot like 3 here at the beginning, but the big shift is that the vowel comes before the R in third as opposed to in 3. So there must be a meaning, a reason for that, and it sure makes it sound and look a lot more like toward, which is going to take me to Taurus every time I hear that tor. And Taurus, again, is the field, but the D at the end takes me to the delta and the triangle, the 3-sided figure, and delta in all sort of math and science represents change. And change is, in astrology, associated with mutable energy, which is the third. It's cardinal, fixed, mutable. Mutable is the cadent houses. And so, I think this third is very much tied to 3 and Tor, and then D represents change and mutation in the field. And then from there we get all just straight down into the cardinal numbers with the th at the end to turn them into ordinal numbers. And this is where the cool insight from my kid came in. And this is the basically the first insight I had with this, and I promise you there's endless more. And so I hope you take my kid's insight and run with it. But what she noticed is that, ooh, this marker's not working so hot. Let's go red. Dun, 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 dun. This is the glyph for Saturn. And my 6-year-old daughter noticed that that looks like a T and an H. And I said, that sure does look like a T and an H. And, you know, being a syncretist, I ran with that and I started thinking about it. And this is the first thing that came up. This TH is this glyph of Saturn. Because Saturn is all about order. You know, Saturn is integrity, energetically. It's all where we get our integrity from, because Saturn doesn't skip anything. Saturn doesn't skip from the first step to the fourth step. Saturn is very, you know, orderly and very mature and responsible, and it completes every step of the process. It doesn't skip. It's all about integers in a row, keeping its integrity. And I would be extremely hard pressed to imagine that this TH at the end of these ordinal numbers has anything to do with anything else except for this glyph. It would be just impossible for me to fathom that this comes from anything else. It fits so exactly perfectly, just like the rest of syncretism once you look into it. So there's another one, and you know, the very first thing that popped into my head with that insight was Saint Thomas Day, which is December 21st. That's the day that the sun enters Capricorn, which is the sign that Saturn is the ruler of. So there you go. That was you know, brought to you by my 6-year-old daughter, a little piece of syncretism. Hope you enjoyed that, and take care, everybody. Peace.